At my brother's ceremony, the room was filled with accolades and applause, but I found myself standing outside, the guard checking the list with a frown. "Ma'am, you're not on the guest list," he said, his tone polite yet firm. I took a breath, mustering my composure. "I'm Sophia Hayes, his sister." As I watched James receive his honors, a wave of shame washed over me, knowing he had no idea that my hidden service had paved the way for the very accolades he was basking in. Today wasn't just about his achievements, it was about to become a revelation, a moment when the truth would finally break through the silence. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own family, waiting for the moment to be truly seen? Share your experiences in the comments. You're not alone. At the Naval Academy's Grand Hall, the air buzzed with pride and anticipation. The ceremony was in full swing, a celebration of valor and sacrifice, but my name wasn't on any list. My brother James was the star of the day, his medals gleaming under the bright lights as he stood tall in his uniform. I stood at the back, a shadow among the crowd, my presence unnoticed and uninvited. The guard approached me with a polite but firm tone. "Ma'am, you're not listed as a guest for this event." I smiled, trying to mask the sting that hit deeper than the cold reception. "Sophia Hayes," I said quietly, "I'm his sister." The name barely registered. The guard's eyes flicked over me, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but only listed guests may enter." I nodded, stepping back, feeling the weight of exclusion pressing down like a heavy fog. James didn't look my way. He was too busy shaking hands, exchanging greetings, basking in the glow of recognition. To him, I was the sister who didn't quite fit into this world, a world of ceremonies, parades, and public honors. Have you ever felt like you were standing right outside your family's life, looking in as if through a pane of thick glass? That was my moment. The ache wasn't just about missing out on a ceremony. It was about the silent distance that had grown between us over the years. The brothers and sisters who shared childhood memories and laughter had somehow become strangers. I could almost hear the echoes of our past, those moments when James was the hero and I was the shadow. Flashbacks flickered through my mind. James, a natural leader even as a boy, always surrounded by friends and praise. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, focused, determined, but often overlooked. While James led the school's football team to victory, I was buried in books, volunteering for causes that never made headlines. Birthdays, holidays, family dinners, all occasions where James's achievements were front and center, and mine faded into the background. Yet, beneath that quiet exterior, a different story was unfolding, one no one in my family knew. I wasn't just the overlooked sibling. I was a naval officer engaged in missions so secret that even James didn't know the real extent of my service. I had taken an oath to protect, to serve in the shadows, accepting the loneliness that came with it. The irony was sharp. While James received accolades for an operation I had covertly supported, my contributions remained classified, hidden behind a veil of silence. As I watched the ceremony from afar, the weight of my unacknowledged sacrifices settled deep within me. The medals pinned on James's chest gleamed like distant stars, visible, celebrated, and revered. Mine, though earned through countless nights of peril and sacrifice, were invisible. And yet, I held no bitterness. I had chosen this path, knowing that sometimes the greatest acts of service go unseen. The guard's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. "Ma'am, I must ask you to leave." I nodded again, not with defeat, but with a quiet resolve. This wasn't the end of my story. The room filled with applause as James accepted another commendation, his smile bright and proud. I stayed just long enough to see the pride in my mother's eyes, the way she beamed for her son, unaware of the sisters standing silently at the edge of their world. Walking away from the hall, I felt a mix of emotions swirling inside me, an ache for connection, yes, but also an unyielding strength. The path I walked was different, but it was mine. I carried a secret burden, a hidden truth that one day, perhaps, would bridge the gap between us. Until then, I would remain in the shadows, watching, waiting, and preparing for the moment when my silence would speak volumes. If you've ever felt unseen by those closest to you, standing just outside the circle of their lives, know that you're not alone. Sometimes, the greatest battles are fought quietly, and the most profound courage lies in enduring the silence. This is only the beginning. The echo of footsteps down the academy's marble halls faded behind me, but the memories they stirred refused to quiet. Childhood was a mosaic of moments, some bright, most overshadowed. James always stood at the center, the victorious captain of every team, the boy who could light up any room with his laugh and charm. While the world celebrated him, I was the silent observer, the one who learned early on that my victories were quieter, my battles unseen. I remember our living room, walls lined with James's trophies and framed photographs of his triumphs. His name was whispered with pride at every family gathering, a constant refrain that sometimes drowned out the softer notes of my own efforts. I was the girl who stayed late studying, who volunteered in the shadows, whose achievements never made the dinner table conversation. I learned to smile through the sting, to accept that being overshadowed was my family's unspoken truth. One birthday party, I recall watching James blow out candles as everyone cheered, their attention fixed on him. I had just received a small scholarship for academic excellence, but the applause felt distant, like a faint melody beneath the roar for my brother. My parents, caught up in celebrating James's leadership award, barely noticed my quiet accomplishment. I tucked my feelings away, folding them into the fabric of who I was becoming. School was no different. James was the charismatic leader, surrounded by friends who admired him. I was the diligent student, often alone, more comfortable with books than crowds. Teachers praised his athletic prowess and social skills. Mine went unnoticed, or at best, acknowledged in passing. The contrast was stark, and it shaped a silent narrative in my mind that my worth was secondary, my contributions less visible. Family gatherings revealed the same pattern. Conversations revolved around James's latest accolades, his promising military career, his natural leadership. I listened, sometimes interjecting with stories of my volunteer work or academic projects, only to be met with polite nods before the focus returned to my brother. It wasn't resentment that I felt, it was a quiet sadness, a yearning for recognition that seemed forever out of reach. Yet, beneath that sadness, a fire burned. I was not content to be forgotten. I immersed myself in causes that mattered, in disciplines that demanded precision and courage. While James trained for public glory, I prepared for a different kind of service, one that required stealth, resilience, and unwavering commitment. I couldn't share this journey with them. It was too secret, too vital. There were nights when the weight of invisibility pressed down heavily. I questioned whether my sacrifices mattered, whether the path I chose was worth the loneliness it demanded. But each time, I reminded myself that valor doesn't always wear a medal or command a standing ovation. Sometimes it exists in the quiet moments, the decisions made in solitude, the risks taken without fanfare. I think back to a particular moment during high school when James was awarded the prestigious Leadership Medal. Our parents beamed with pride, and the house was filled with laughter and congratulations. That same evening, I was working late on a project that would ultimately support a classified naval operation, one that would save lives, but remain unknown to the world. I couldn't tell anyone, not even my family. The secret weighed heavily, but it was a burden I bore willingly. Many times, I've wondered how different things might have been if my accomplishments had been visible, if my family had understood the depth of my commitment. But I've also come to realize that recognition, while deeply desired, is not the measure of one's worth. My journey was my own, shaped by silent sacrifices and unseen victories. The emotional pain of being overshadowed was real and raw. It left scars that weren't visible but ran deep. Yet, it also forged a resilience within me, a strength that no medal could symbolize. I learned to find validation within myself, to embrace the quiet dignity of service that doesn't seek applause. Sometimes, when James and I crossed paths during family events, there was a polite distance between us. He never questioned my choices, but he never fully understood them either. Our conversations were careful, measured, never delving into the complexities of my world. I accepted that gap, knowing that one day the truth might bridge it. If you've ever felt overshadowed by someone you love, seen but not truly known, this story will resonate with you. The ache of invisibility is profound, but so is the courage to keep moving forward when no one is watching. This chapter of my life shaped me in ways I'm only beginning to understand. The quiet sacrifices, the unspoken battles, they are the foundation of the story still unfolding. They called me Sophia Hayes, the sister who quietly supported James from the sidelines. But beneath that name was an identity few knew, a naval officer operating in the shadows, a ghost in the classified world of covert missions. My family thought I was just the overlooked sibling, the one who chose a quiet life far from the spotlight. The truth was far more complicated. I remember the first time I donned my uniform, the weight of it more than fabric. It was a mantle of responsibility, secrecy, and sacrifice. My training was grueling, my missions even more so. Unlike the public ceremonies James attended, my service was hidden, wrapped in layers of classified protocols and silent valor. I learned early on that the greatest acts of courage often go unnoticed, and the price of secrecy is isolation. While James's commendations were displayed proudly on our living room wall, my achievements were locked away in secure files, accessible only to a select few. The operation that earned James his latest medal was one I had helped orchestrate from behind enemy lines. He was the face of the success. I was the unseen force guiding him through the darkness. It was a bitter irony. The brother who teased me about my desk job was unknowingly celebrating a victory I had helped secure. The irony cut deep, but I bore it silently. Revealing my true role could jeopardize ongoing missions and endanger lives. The oath I took demanded discretion, even when it meant sacrificing personal recognition. There were nights when I sat alone, the weight of my hidden identity pressing down. I thought of James standing on that stage, receiving praise for a mission I had supported with every fiber of my being. I wasn't jealous, my pride in him was real, but a part of me longed for acknowledgement, for the chance to share my story. The irony didn't end there. Our family gatherings were full of conversations about James's career, his leadership, his bravery. I listened, nodding politely, the truth of my service a secret between me and the shadows. When James joked about my boring job, I smiled, knowing the lives saved because of my decisions. The gulf between us wasn't just about recognition, it was about the worlds we inhabited. My covert work took me to places no one in my family could imagine, dark alleyways in foreign cities, secure command centers, missions that required precision and nerve. Each deployment was a test, a challenge that demanded everything I had. Yet, returning home, I was expected to be the supportive sister, the quiet presence in the background. Sometimes I wondered if James even believed in my service, or if he thought I was just another civilian stuck in a routine job. The dismissive comments stung, but I accepted them as part of the price for living a double life. To protect the mission, I had to protect my silence. The truth was more than a secret, it was an invisible barrier between us. I longed to tell James about the nights I coordinated rescue operations, about the times I prevented disaster with a single decision. But the rules were clear. Classified meant classified. My silence was a shield, but it was also a prison. One mission stands out in my memory, a hostage rescue in a volatile region, where I directed a SEAL team through a labyrinth of danger. The success of that operation saved dozens of lives, yet no one outside a select circle knew I was the one guiding them. Meanwhile, James received a medal for his role in the larger operation, a role I had quietly enabled. The duality of our lives was stark. He was the celebrated hero, I was the silent guardian. It was a paradox that shaped our relationship, one defined by unspoken truths and invisible sacrifices. I carried the weight of my hidden identity with pride, but also with a measure of loneliness. If you've ever worn a mask to protect those you love, hiding your true self to keep them safe, you'll understand this struggle. The burden of secrecy is heavy, but the commitment to duty is heavier. My story is one of quiet strength, a testament to the unseen heroes who serve without fanfare, whose valor is measured not in applause, but in lives saved. As I stood outside that ceremony, watching James receive his honors, I felt the full force of this irony. The sibling he dismissed was the one who had fought battles he didn't know existed. The sister he overlooked was the one who saved him. And though the world didn't see it yet, that truth was waiting to be revealed. The day the silence shattered began like any other, but it carried the weight of a secret finally unbound. I was sitting in a quiet, secure office when the door opened, and Admiral Lawson stepped in, his uniform crisp and commanding. The room seemed to hold its breath as he handed me a sealed envelope, the declassification order for my identity and contributions. The moment felt surreal, a pivot point where shadows met light. "Lieutenant Commander Hayes," he said, his voice steady but warm, "the time has come to acknowledge your service publicly." I nodded, the gravity of those words sinking in. For years, my work had been cloaked in secrecy, a silent battle fought away from the eyes of family and friends. Now, the veil was lifting. The timing was no coincidence. James's upcoming ceremony was the perfect moment to reveal the truth, not just to the world, but to the family that had never fully seen me. Admiral Lawson spoke of the delicate balance between operational security and rightful recognition. "Your story deserves to be told," he said. "Your sacrifices, your leadership, they're part of our history now." As he spoke, memories flooded back, the countless missions, the quiet nights coordinating operations, the weight of decisions made in isolation. I'd accepted the solitude for the greater good, but a part of me longed for this moment, a chance to step into the light and claim my place. The declassification order was more than a document. It was a key unlocking years of silence. It meant that my family would finally learn the truth behind my absence from their celebrations, the reason for the distance between us. It was an emotional pivot, a turning point where my hidden achievements would no longer be confined to shadows. I thought of James, preparing to receive his medal, unaware of the storm about to break quietly beside him. The contrast between his public accolades and my secret service was stark. Yet, I felt no jealousy, only a profound hope that this revelation would bridge the gap that had grown between us. Admiral Lawson reminded me of our family's history, the time when our parents celebrated James's admission to the Naval Academy with pride, while I quietly received a National Science Award. Then, as now, one type of recognition overshadowed the other. But today, the scales were tipping. The weight of years spent in silence lifted slightly as I prepared to step forward. The declassification was not just a formality, it was an invitation to rewrite the narrative. To be seen not as the overlooked sibling, but as a leader, a protector, an equal. As I left the secure room, the world outside seemed different, charged with possibility. The ceremony was hours away, and yet I felt a quiet determination building inside me. This was more than a personal victory, it was a moment of truth that demanded courage. I imagined my family's faces when they learned the real story. Would they be shocked? Proud? Confused? I didn't know. But I was ready to face whatever came, armed with the knowledge that my service had mattered, even when it was hidden. The declassification was a promise that the sacrifices made in silence would no longer be invisible. It was a beacon for others like me, whose stories are often buried beneath layers of secrecy and misunderstanding. Today, those stories would begin to be told. If you've ever carried a secret burden, waiting for the right moment to reveal your truth, you understand the power of this turning point. It's a moment when silence breaks and the world shifts in unexpected ways. For me, that moment was just beginning, and it would change everything. The grand hall was alive with applause and the hum of whispered conversations, but beneath the surface, a tension simmered. I stood at the edge of the room, my uniform crisp, my posture steady, yet inside, a storm was gathering. James was front and center, basking in the glow of accolades, while I, his sister, his shadow, waited silently for my moment to step forward. The young officer who had barred my entry earlier now looked uncertain as Admiral Lawson approached. The Admiral's presence was commanding, his expression unreadable as he scanned the room, then turned toward the officer. "Escort Lieutenant Commander Hayes to the podium," he instructed with quiet authority. The officer's eyes widened, a flicker of recognition dawning as he realized who I was. "Admiral Hayes," he stammered, confusion rippling across his face. I met the Admiral's gaze, a silent nod affirming my identity. The weight of my rank was more than just a title, it was the culmination of years of silent service, now coming into full view. As we walked toward the center of the room, the murmurs grew louder. Faces shifted, eyes narrowed in disbelief, and a hush began to fall over the crowd. My family's expressions, a mix of shock, confusion, and something like awe, were seared into my memory. James's smile faltered for a moment, his eyes searching mine as if trying to reconcile the sister he thought he knew with the woman standing before him. The Admiral stepped forward, his voice carrying through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we recognize not only Lieutenant James Hayes, but also the extraordinary service of his sister, Lieutenant Commander Sophia Hayes." The room seemed to hold its breath as he continued, detailing my covert missions, my leadership in classified operations, and the lives saved through my actions. For years, I had stood in the background, my contributions invisible, my sacrifices unacknowledged. Now, the silence was broken, and the truth illuminated the room. My family, the guests, even James himself, were confronted with a reality they hadn't known existed. James stepped aside as I was called forward to receive the Navy Cross. The weight of the medal as it was pinned to my chest was more than metal, it was a symbol of recognition, of validation, of finally being seen. The room remained silent, the gravity of the moment settling over everyone like a heavy shroud. I caught James's eye again, and in that glance, I saw a flicker of understanding, a dawning realization that the sister he had dismissed was the one who had fought battles he hadn't even known about. The distance between us seemed to shrink, if only for a moment, bridged by the unspoken acknowledgement of shared sacrifice. The ceremony continued, but for me time slowed. The applause felt distant, replaced by a profound sense of release. The years of invisibility, the feelings of being sidelined, began to dissolve. I was no longer just James's sister. I was Lieutenant Commander Sophia Hayes, a naval officer honored for her courage and commitment. As the event drew to a close, my family approached hesitantly. Their questions were cautious, their voices tinged with newfound respect. James offered a tentative smile, the first real connection we'd shared in years. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt possible to walk it together. If you've ever stood in the shadows, waiting for your truth to be recognized, you know the power of this moment. It's a turning point where silence gives way to acknowledgement, where the unseen are finally seen. This was my moment, not just of recognition, but of transformation. The room, once alive with applause and celebration, now settled into a profound silence. The metal pin to my chest felt heavy, not just from its weight, but from the gravity of what it symbolized. The Navy Cross was more than an award, it was a formal acknowledgement of the sacrifices I had made in the shadows, a public testament to the courage that had long gone unrecognized. As I stood there, the faces around me reflected a spectrum of emotions, astonishment, respect, and perhaps a touch of guilt. My family, in particular, seemed caught between disbelief and dawning realization. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and my father's jaw tightened as he processed the truth unveiled before him. James, ever the confident leader, now appeared vulnerable, his earlier certainty replaced by a quiet reckoning. The silence stretched, a collective breath held as the room absorbed the revelation. It was as if the ceremony itself paused, waiting for the weight of this moment to settle. For years, my service had been invisible, my impact unspoken. Now, that silence was broken, replaced by a recognition that transcended words. I caught James's gaze again, and in that look, I saw a shift, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement of my worth. The brother who had once dismissed me now stood witness to my valor. It was a fragile bridge, but it was there, built on the foundation of truth and courage. The formalities continued, but my mind was elsewhere, tracing the journey that had led me here. The countless missions conducted in secrecy, the nights spent coordinating operations that saved lives, the weight of decisions made in isolation, all converged in this singular moment of recognition. The Navy Cross was a symbol of that journey, a beacon shining through years of quiet sacrifice. Around me, people whispered, some reaching out with tentative congratulations. Their words were tentative, as if unsure how to reconcile the sister they thought they knew with the decorated officer before them. But the respect was genuine, and that mattered. My family approached slowly, their steps hesitant yet purposeful. My mother reached out, her hand trembling as she brushed a stray lock of hair from my face. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We never knew." My father nodded, his eyes reflecting a mix of pride and regret. James stepped forward last, his expression earnest. "Sophia," he said quietly, "I'm sorry it took me this long to see you. You've been my hero all along." Those words, simple yet profound, cracked open the walls built by years of misunderstanding. The apology wasn't just for overlooked achievements, it was for the distance between siblings, for the silence that had grown too loud. In that moment, I realized that recognition was more than medals or ceremonies. It was about being seen, truly seen, by those who mattered most. The Navy Cross was a milestone, but the real victory was the beginning of healing, of bridging the gaps forged by secrecy and silence. If you've ever waited for your worth to be acknowledged, you understand the power of this moment. It's a quiet triumph, a turning point where invisible courage is finally honored. Standing there, metal gleaming, I knew this was not just an end, but a new beginning, one where my story could finally be told and my voice heard. The days after the ceremony felt surreal, like stepping into a new world where silence was replaced by tentative conversations and the slow thawing of old barriers. My family, once distant and unaware, began to process the revelation of my service, their attitudes shifting from disbelief to genuine curiosity. The walls built over years of misunderstanding were cracking, letting light and connection seep through. At first, the changes were subtle. My mother called more often, asking about the missions I couldn't discuss before, her voice laced with both pride and a touch of awe. She wanted to understand the woman behind the uniform, the sister they had overlooked for so long. My father, usually reserved, began sharing stories of his own military days, opening a dialogue that had never existed between us. James was different. The brother who once seemed indifferent now sought me out, his questions sincere and his demeanor more open. We talked not just about the ceremony or the medal, but about the complexities of our shared past. He wanted to know what it was like to serve in the shadows, to carry burdens no one else could see. For the first time, our conversations felt real, unguarded. Family dinners, once marked by polite distance, became spaces for stories and laughter. They asked about the challenges I faced, the sacrifices I made, and slowly, the admiration in their eyes grew. The competition that had defined our relationship softened into mutual respect. It was as if the recognition I had long craved had finally opened a door to understanding. Yet, the journey wasn't without its awkward moments. There were still silences filled with unspoken questions and tentative steps toward reconciliation. Some family members struggled to grasp the significance of classified service, while others wrestled with feelings of guilt for having overlooked me. But these moments were part of the healing, a necessary unraveling of old patterns. James and I found ourselves sharing more than just family history. We talked about our hopes, fears, and the burdens we each carried. The rivalry that had shadowed our childhood gave way to partnership, a bond strengthened by the truth finally laid bare. I saw in him a humility that had been absent before, a willingness to learn and grow. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch of our childhood home, James turned to me and said, "I never realized how much you carried alone. I'm proud of you, Sophia, not just for the medal, but for everything you've endured." Those words, simple yet profound, felt like a balm for years of silent pain. The shift in family dynamics was more than just surface level, it was transformative. The recognition of my service had sparked a deeper connection, allowing us to move beyond past misunderstandings. The siblings who once existed in parallel worlds were beginning to intersect, weaving a stronger fabric of shared experience. If you've ever longed for acceptance from those closest to you, you know how powerful this shift can be. It's a reminder that recognition isn't just about accolades, it's about opening hearts and rebuilding relationships. For my family and me, This was a new chapter, one filled with hope and the promise of genuine connection. In the quiet aftermath of revelation and reconciliation, I found myself standing at a crossroads of personal growth and healing. The years of feeling invisible, of carrying burdens alone, had left deep marks not just on my relationships, but on how I saw myself. Now, with the walls of silence broken and my family beginning to understand, I faced the task of accepting my own worth beyond their previous ignorance. It wasn't an easy journey. For so long, I had defined myself through the lens of being overlooked, the sister who worked in shadows, the one whose sacrifices were unseen. Letting go of that narrative meant embracing a new identity, one forged not just by service and medals, but by resilience, courage, and the quiet dignity of perseverance. James's apology was a turning point in this process. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he sat across from me, sincerity etched into his features. "Sophia," he began, voice steady but vulnerable, "I'm sorry it took me so long to see you. I was so focused on being the hero that I didn't realize you were the one carrying so much behind the scenes." Those words, spoken with humility, pierced through years of silence and misunderstanding. His apology wasn't just a formality, it was an acknowledgement of the shared history we'd both lived, the sacrifices made in different ways, and the pain of being apart. In that moment, I felt a weight lift, the possibility of a new kind of sibling bond blossoming. It was a reminder that healing requires courage from both sides, the willingness to admit fault and the grace to forgive. I realized that my worth wasn't dependent on external validation or my family's approval. It was intrinsic, rooted in the choices I'd made and the strength I'd shown in the face of adversity. This self-acceptance was liberating, allowing me to stand taller, not just as an officer decorated for valor, but as a person who had endured, survived, and thrived. The journey of personal growth also meant redefining my relationship with James. We were no longer competitors vying for attention or approval. We were allies, connected by blood and now by understanding. Our conversations deepened, moving beyond surface pleasantries to genuine exchanges about hopes, fears, and the complexities of our shared past. There were still moments of awkwardness, of navigating new territory, but the foundation had shifted. The apology had opened a door, and both of us were stepping through, eager to build something stronger. I saw in James a willingness to learn, to listen, and to honor my experiences as valid and meaningful. This process extended beyond our sibling relationship. My parents, too, began to engage with me differently, asking questions, expressing pride, and showing a newfound respect for the path I'd chosen. The family dynamic, once marked by distance and misunderstanding, was gradually transforming into one of connection and support. If you've ever struggled with feeling unseen or underestimated, you know how hard it can be to claim your worth. It requires courage to face the past, forgiveness for those who didn't understand, and above all, compassion for yourself. My journey was not just about receiving recognition, it was about embracing my own value and allowing others to see it too. In the quiet moments that followed, I found peace in knowing that my story was no longer hidden. It was a story of silent courage, of battles fought in the dark, and of a family learning to see beyond the surface. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that this acceptance, both from myself and from those I loved, was the greatest victory of all. The journey we had taken, from silence to recognition, from distance to connection, was more than a personal victory. It was liberation. The weight of unspoken truths and hidden sacrifices had finally lifted, allowing me to breathe freely in the light of mutual respect and understanding. That newfound respect wasn't just a balm for old wounds, it was the foundation of a transformed relationship, one built on honesty, empathy, and shared history. I remember the first time I truly felt this shift, a quiet evening at home when James and I sat side by side, no words needed to fill the space between us. It was a moment of emotional closure, a silent acknowledgement that we had moved beyond rivalry and misunderstanding. The barriers erected by years of separation crumbled, replaced by a bond strengthened through truth. From that point on, our interactions carried a new weight, a sense of mutual respect that transcended past grievances. We celebrated each other's successes without envy or competition. James no longer saw me as the overshadowed sister, but as an equal, a partner in the service of something greater. And I, in turn, embraced his journey with pride and genuine support. This transformation rippled through our family. The once strained connections softened, and conversations deepened. Where there had been awkward silences, there were now shared stories and laughter. The recognition of my hidden valor became a catalyst for healing, reminding us all that understanding often begins with seeing beyond appearances. Yet, this was not just a personal or familial victory, it was a broader lesson about the nature of valor and recognition. True courage is not always visible, it does not always come wrapped in medals or parades. Sometimes it lives in the quiet decisions, the unseen sacrifices, and the perseverance that goes unnoticed by the world. I learned that recognition often arrives when least expected, breaking through the layers of assumption and invisibility. It challenges us to reconsider our definitions of heroism and to honor those who serve in silence. My story became a testament to the countless silent heroes whose courage shapes our world without fanfare. If you've ever felt dismissed, underestimated, or invisible, know this: your worth is not diminished by the lack of recognition. True valor lies in the endurance of hardship, the commitment to duty, and the strength to carry on when no one is watching. And sometimes, the most profound victories come not in the spotlight, but in the quiet moments of personal triumph and reconciliation. As I reflect on this journey, I am reminded that liberation comes from embracing one's truth and allowing it to transform not only ourselves, but those around us. The story of a sister overlooked, a service hidden, and a family healed is a reminder that the heart of valor beats strongest where it is least seen, and that recognition, when it comes, can change everything. If you've ever felt like a silent hero in your own story, unseen, unheard, overlooked, you're not alone. There are countless others whose courage and sacrifice go unnoticed, hidden beneath layers of silence and misunderstanding. This story isn't just mine, it belongs to all who've persevered in the shadows, waiting for their truth to emerge. Today, I invite you to honor those silent warriors in your life. Maybe it's a family member who quietly supports everyone without seeking recognition, a friend who battles unseen struggles, or even yourself, the person who keeps going when no one else is watching. Recognize their strength, acknowledge their sacrifices, and let their stories be heard. Perseverance in silence is a form of courage that deserves celebration. It's easy to applaud the visible victories, the medals, the speeches, the public honors, but true valor often lies in the quiet moments, the long nights, the difficult decisions, the unwavering commitment when no one is watching. These acts shape our world in profound ways. Family healing is another powerful lesson from this journey. Sometimes, the distance between loved ones isn't about lack of care, but about the stories left untold and the truths concealed. Opening those doors, sharing those hidden parts of ourselves, can transform relationships and foster deeper understanding. If you're navigating your own path of silent service or struggling to be seen by those who matter most, remember that recognition often comes when least expected. Keep holding on to your truth, keep standing firm in your worth. Your story matters, and one day, it will be the light that changes everything. Drop a key in the comments if you've unlocked your own worth, if you've stepped out of the shadows and into your own light. Subscribe to Echoes of Life for more stories of silent heroes finally being heard, of courage unfolding in unexpected places, and of the profound power that comes from embracing your truth. Your voice, your story, your courage, they are the echoes that will inspire others to find their own. Don't let your silence be mistaken for weakness. Instead, let it be the quiet strength that paves the way for recognition, healing, and liberation. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.